You're listening to the Jetstream Cargo Jet Pilots Podcast. This episode starts now. Welcome to the first episode of the new Jetstream Podcast. This is a new communication space for our pilot group, created for one reason above all others: to have clarity when uncertainty is high. Contract negotiations create questions, assumptions, and speculation. Some of that is natural, but some of it is unhelpful, and some of it can actively undermine progress if it goes unchecked. The purpose of this podcast is to provide consistent, reliable communication, to create a shared understanding of process and direction, and to reduce narratives driven by speculation. We're joined here today by myself. I'm your host, Vice Chair and FO Rep, Ze'ev Nafte. We're joined by Sebastian, our Secretary, Treasurer, and our Negotiations Committee Chair, as well as Adam, our Chair of our MEC, as well as our ex officio member for the Negotiations Committee. Today's episode is going to cover a main conversation between the three of us, as well as a section on frequently asked questions. Every episode, we're going to be taking your questions that our pilot group submit. You can submit questions to cjtpodcast@elpa.org or message any of our members on our P2P committee, negotiations committee, or our MEC directly. Shoot us an email, shoot us a text, and ask us your questions. We'll include them, as many as we can, in each episode and try and answer them to the best of our ability. So we're going to start off today with Adam. Thank you for joining us, Adam. And the first question I have for you is, what are your core responsibilities as chair during contract negotiations?
Thanks, Deb. The MEC chair constitutionally serves as the CEO of the MEC. And so at CargoJet, that means I'm the chief officer with respect to strategizing, communicating, coordinating with our committees, including negotiating committee, which I serve as an ex officio member, which just means I'm there to be a member of the team, participate, and negotiate with the company in the room. But it doesn't mean that I'm the end-all, be-all, the decision maker. I don't override the negotiations committee, and I certainly don't unilaterally make terms of the contract at the table. We all work collectively on bargaining.
What I'd like to know is, how are negotiation priorities established? Specifically, how member feedback, committee input, and strategic considerations, how do those come together to form for negotiations?
It all starts with members at the foot of it all. Surveys, darts, your emails, your conversations with members of the negotiating committee and members of the P2P, members of the MEC, all those are taken into account. We've just had our third survey, so that is going to be reviewed very shortly, and we'll be reviewing it for the benefits section. We also have committee input, so we're going to have members of the scheduling committee, the benefits committee, all the various committees that have a section of the contract that they're particularly interested in. They're going to have the ability to weigh in on the state of that section, provide edits. Currently, the CASC has the section on investigations, and we're expecting to pass that in this next round. We also are going to draw some inspiration from industry standards. We have been aiming to standardize some aspects of the contract, and then the rest of it just has to do with strategic considerations. Where can we give, and where do we need to receive? Those are our primary.
I like that. So basically taking membership feedback, so directly from the pilot group, but also drawing from other pilot contracts, specifically ELPA contracts, and also then going to each committee relevant to that section and speaking with them, discussing with them kind of that relevant section. So that's great, and I'm sure a lot of people will be happy to hear that. And so my next question I have for you, Adam, is what will be shared during bargaining? When can we expect updates? But also, I guess a big question is, why must some information remain protected? Why are we unable to know certain things?
So, short answer, we really want to share as much as we can. We want to keep everybody informed. We want the pilot group to be brought along with the process. but some things do have to remain confidential. You're going to continue to see progress reports. We have been providing reports from the negotiating committee after each bargaining session. You'll see those. You are also going to see a bargaining portal appear on the website that will contain some FAQs. We've provided the road shows, and LEC meetings are great places in order to receive updates. But why does some stuff have to remain protected? Quite simply, like, our bargaining power depends on having some confidential information. We don't want to set some false expectations and have misinformation circulate among the pilot group. And quite frankly, we want to have an honest dialogue with the company, and we need to protect some of the confidential information in order to do that.
And I think that's a good point as well, is this is a negotiation, and the more information you kind of tell your membership, that's probably going to get back to the company. And at the end of the day, we need to protect that integrity to make sure that we're having a fair negotiation, and also a negotiation where it doesn't put us at a disadvantage. So thank you, Adam. I really appreciate that. Sebastian, I do have a few questions for you. First of all, thank you for being here today. And secondly, you have a unique position where you're the secretary-treasurer, but you're also the negotiations chair. So quite a lot on your shoulders. And so the first question I have for you is more on a financial aspect, but what financial realities shape contract negotiations, and why are they important for pilots to understand?
All right. Well, first of all, Ze'ev, thanks for having me on this podcast. I appreciate the opportunity to interact with you guys and actually, provide some of this information to the membership, because, of course, a lot of this is stuff that, people talk about but don't really understand. So, before I carry on as well, I apologize. I'm just sort of getting over a bit of a cold and flu type situation, so I'm a little congested, but I'll do my best to minimize the coughing in the background. So as far as your question regarding, the financial element of the bargaining process, of course, one of the things that is, sort of ubiquitous to this process, not just with Cargojet, but generally when you're in a negotiating cycle, it is, bar none, sort of the most financially burdensome part of a cycle of an MEC or a collective group. In our case, for all of the negotiation prep that took place, and then once we officially entered into negotiations in September, we've kept a positive balance. So we're currently sitting with a cumulative surplus in our account of a little over $1 million. That is sort of comprised of primarily our dues revenues, which equate to approximately $100,000 per month, just derived from our dues, of which we retain about 50%.
Awesome. And I really appreciate that transparency. I think it's great for the members to kind of know where we're sitting and how we're doing financially. And it's great. Like, we're at a surplus. We run at a surplus. We come in under budget is what I understand from that context. And I do want to talk a little bit about the MCF, or the Major Contingency Fund, because that's a fund ALPA has for us for negotiations. And I think some people are not aware of it. Some people don't really understand it. So could you kind of elaborate, and Adam, if you want to add on as well, feel free to do so. But if you kind of want to elaborate on what the MCF is and how is it going to benefit us and what its purpose is.
So just generally, I mean, ALPA comes with a whole host of resources, financial and otherwise. For us right now, where we are in our cycle, the MCF, commonly known, people talk about the war chest, and that is the MCF, which is the Major Contingency Fund. And what that is a fund that is actually derived from the dues of all of the ALPA properties that are, a portion of them are put into this bucket, which becomes the Major Contingency Fund. And the fund is in place essentially to prevent individual MECs from, overly exhausting their own funds and their own stores of dues that are theirs exclusively. So for a group our size, for example, I mean, we're under 500 pilots, so we are eligible for, up to $1 million, and that's in American dollars, of additional funds to help us through the process. Essentially, it sort of contemplates, negotiations being sort of organic creatures. They can be relatively quick, or they can extend, into years and so on. So that obviously becomes very financially draining. So the MCF is there to essentially help MECs and negotiating committees to pay for all the costs on an ongoing basis, sort of longer term.
Awesome. Well, that's good to know, and I'm sure a lot of people are happy that exists. Adam, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just jump in. So specifically, the MCF covers not everything to do with negotiations, but family awareness, P2P, strategy, communications. So it's basically your unity building fund, and it should go without saying that unity really is a primary resource that we depend on when it comes to contract negotiations. Getting everybody pulling in the same direction for a common goal, that takes money. So that's what the MCF is there for. And what it matches is dollar for dollar. What we spend will also be matched by the MCF.
Well, that's great to hear. And I think I'll add on to that just briefly. Working with the membership committee, as I was membership chair previously, I organized a family day and a few of our other unity building events. We have enjoyed some recent events. Recently, we had a Christmas dinner or holiday dinner in Cincinnati. Over 50 members were away from home, and I'm really happy that we had that event happen. And 2026, we are planning to get out there and organize some social events, and not just in Hamilton, across Canada at certain airports and areas to get the families out, to get people informed, to answer people's questions. So that will be happening, as well as another big membership or family day this year as well. Thank you so much for that, guys. And moving on to the next question, this is aimed at both of you. We can start off with Sebastian, but a lot of the membership wants to know how we spend our dues in a negotiation. How are they spent? But also, what are we doing to actively save our dues spent? What are we doing to temper our spending? Are we, and if so, how so?
In terms of how are we saving money, one of the predominant ways in which we have been able to actually save an appreciable amount of money from the dues is that during the protocol agreement negotiation, which took place in September with the company, we did negotiate, and the company did agree to pay for essentially half of the negotiators in the room during negotiation days. So 2 negotiators fully paid for by the company. And that's an appreciable savings if you consider that what we're actually, the cost incurred per negotiator is their salary per day spent in the
Wow.
room. So we're not bearing that cost.
Savings.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, we're not bearing that cost ourselves. It's shouldered between us and the company, and we feel that was a great win for the protocol agreement.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Sebastian. And Adam, do you want to add anything as well?
Yeah, I just wanted to add and jump in and highlight one of the things we've been able to spend our money on. We currently have used 3 consultants. So we have an outside counsel from one of the large labor firms in Toronto that we've used quite a bit in arbitrations. We also have a scope expert consultant from the United States and a benefits consultant. So we really want to get these areas of the collective agreement done right.
Well, it's certainly good to hear, and we need all the firepower we can because it's going to be very important for us going forward. The next thing I want to touch on as well is I asked Adam, and I'll ask Sebastian, is can you kind of tell me, Sebastian, your role as the negotiations chair? And I think you have a unique perspective as well, being the secretary-treasurer and on the MEC. And tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Ze'ev. It is an interesting sort of a construct. I mean, the 2 hats together, oftentimes I'm just wearing one or the other. In the case of as the negotiations chair, the role specifically that I fulfill with that is coordinating with our group of negotiators, writing drafts, handling sections sort of in a sequential basis, formulating passes for the company, but then also liaising between the MEC and the negotiating committee, of which I'm a part of. So essentially, it's the role as the chair of the committee is to sort of organize the team of negotiators and in a coordinated sort of a structure with the MEC.
I kind of want to elaborate on something you did briefly mention there, and you said passes between the company, and what did you mean by that exactly?
So when I say a pass to the company, it's essentially a draft of a section that we're negotiating in the moment. Whether it's an administrative section that we handled sort of in the late part of 2025. So we will essentially write an architecture of what we want in the contract, in the new CBA. So a pass to the company essentially means writing a section in rough that we then literally pass over to the company. They then take it. Oftentimes they'll go away with it. They'll discuss it amongst themselves with their legal counsel and so on, and subject matter experts. And then they'll make edits to it, pass it back to us, and then we will obviously read their edits, and then we'll respond to those.
Wow. Okay, well, that's really interesting in terms of the actual negotiation process. I'm sure a few folks are curious about that. Adam, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to set aside one of the misconceptions just while we're on the topic. People believe that, negotiations are nonstop, direct across the table from the company. That's really not how it ends up going. Most of the prep work and discussions happen sort of just with your team in the room. So you end up with maybe 1/3 or 1/5 of the time are you actually sitting across from the company representatives. Most of the time you're working amongst ourselves, refining our proposals and discussing the passes back.
That's a good point, actually, because I think in a lot of ways it is drastically less exciting than a lot of the members would think, that, we're sitting across the table from our quote unquote adversary, yelling and screaming and flipping tables and so on. And I suppose, fortunately for both sides, that's not in fact what it looks like the majority of the time.
All right. Well, that's good to know. And again, great look into the process of how things work. So the next thing I want to do is move on to frequently asked questions. And I think this is a really important part of the podcast, is taking questions from guys on the line and answering them. That's half the reason of this podcast, is so that your questions are answered and people, know that we're listening, we're talking, we're chatting, and we hear you guys. So one thing that's come up a fair amount for us is people want to know how the climate has been with the company, how the relationship has been across the table so far with the company, because we have had, if I understand correctly, a few sessions so far in negotiations, and people are curious what that looks like. So either of you, feel free to answer and let us know. Sebastian, maybe you can take point on this one, as I know you are the negotiations chair.
Yeah, good question, Ze'ev, and I think it's on the mind of a lot of the membership. How is the relationship with the company at the table? What does it look like? So at the beginning, very first day of negotiating, I think one of the things that we all realized on our side was that essentially the scope of what we were embarking on was something that the company was not quite prepared for at that point. They thought that essentially we were taking our existing collective agreement, making some track changes and some minor edits, and then agreeing on something that emanated from that. What we are in fact doing is rewriting an entire document, a contract. This is our first ALPA contract. So once we got that concept sort of through to the company side, the temperature in the room has been very workable. It's been collaborative. We don't agree on all points, but that's to be expected. It is a negotiation after all. But having said that, we haven't had any sort of stumbling points. There's been no flipping of tables or throwing of chairs. It's been like I said, it's been very workable. I think that both sides are motivated to get this contract wrapped up.
Awesome. Well, that's definitely good to hear. And Adam, did you want to touch on any of those points?
I think Sebastian covered most of it, but yeah, I'll just say we've gotten into a good cadence with the company of exchanging proposals, getting proposals back, and developing what are becoming our TAs or our tentative agreements. And as we work through it, we're probably going to encounter some things that are more contentious, and we're hoping that cadence and that sort of disposition with the company is carried forward.
Yeah, and I think what's nice to be said here, and what's important to recognize is for a few folks, is that this isn't just a contract to improve our pay. This is a contract to improve the language of almost every section, down to the little nitty-gritty ones, but to take our current collective agreement and move it towards an industry standard agreement. And we have an industry standard now where ALPA is almost pretty much every single professional pilot group in the country is ALPA. So we have an idea and we have access to what industry standard looks like across the board. And I think we're going to carry that forward, if I'm not mistaken.
That's a very good point, Ze'ev, because this is actually the first time in the history of Canadian aviation where there is arguably an industry standard that is established within Canada. Prior to now, of course, some companies in Canada were not unionized. Others who were either Unifor, some were ALPA, there was ACPA, and so on. So from the perspective of any pilot group negotiating a contract, it was quite difficult to actually stand behind the concept of an industry standard, whereas now, as you point out, I mean, there's essentially the ALPA umbrella, which covers everybody in Canada. So it's a great benefit to us as far as that goes.
Kind of elephant in the room here that is obviously our most frequently asked question, and something where we will address, is the pay. What does that look like? Because no numbers have been shared yet, and I understand we're not there yet in the contract negotiations. If I understand correctly, it's a 3-step process where we start administratively and move into operational, and then the final piece of the puzzle is compensation. But as of course, all of us, many of us do want to know what is going on with our compensation and what's the going forward concept. What's the outlook going forward?
Yeah, thanks. We've all heard that question innumerable times, and it's not as though we don't want to answer it. We would all love to tell all the members, what your pay could be expected to be in the next contract. We know that that's a mortgage payment, a car payment, your vacation. Like, there's reasons why everybody wants to know this, and they're all very personal. And I will just tell you that the company doesn't deal in pay. They aren't going to look at our section of pay and just say, okay, we're good with that. They want to know what the contract is going to cost them, sort of operationally, and then in terms of total compensation, so total cost of the contract. So as we get into and as you described, the operational and then the monetary section of the contract, we're going to be divvying up that pot of money that the company, and we don't know how big that pot is at the moment, between pay, between benefits, between other things, between certain operational considerations. And once all that's said and done, pay is nearly the last thing. I mean, term, the length of the contract will probably come after that, but pay is nearly the last thing. So what we will say is, and we talked about this in the last frequently asked question, is we do have an industry standard. We know what our comparators are. So we know WestJet, Air Canada, Transat just recently got a contract ratified. Those are what we see as our industry comparators. They all fly wide bodies and narrow bodies. They go largely to some of the same places that we do. We're hoping to, of course, fall into somewhere within those ranges. Confidentially, and bargaining power is going to depend on keeping a lot of this confidential until we, have the final TA and bring it to the membership. So I'd love to give you more of a concrete answer in terms of what you're going to get paid, but at this point, we're doing our best to make sure we get the best that we think we can get, and the survey certainly has given us a strong mandate to do so. That is one of our top priorities.
And I think there's something to be said as well that there will be additional surveys in the future. And when we do have a tentative agreement, it will be brought to the membership, and they're going to be able to read the entire thing over before being able to vote on it. And there will be an executive summary so that, we're not just going to enter into another agreement without anyone having input or understanding it fully first. I think that's important to be said.
Yeah, for sure. We really want to be transparent with the process. Everybody's going to see the executive summary pretty quickly after we get the final TA, which maybe in May, maybe in June, maybe in July. We don't know when it's going to happen. But when we do have that final tentative agreement where everything comes together, an executive summary will go to the membership. The full agreement will go to the membership prior to ratification. There'll very likely be another set of road shows across the country to give people a chance to weigh in and ask questions and see the summary presented to them. Once all that's done, everybody will be able to vote, and ALPA does their votes online. So I think there's a phone option as well, but online you'll be able to go in, click your choice, and vote. It's none of this in-person voting where you have to show up at a specific location at a specific time that we heard happen last time around. And you did mention sort of off the top there, additional surveys. We just completed our third survey, benefit survey. We're going to gather the results for that, and very likely there's at least one more survey coming in a more generalized nature to get the temperature of the pilot group going into the spring negotiations.
Excellent. And, please, everyone, keep checking their email, keep, staying engaged, ask questions. Sebastian, I'm sure you want to add it to this as well.
Yeah, I mean, everything that you both mentioned within the past couple of minutes here, all very valid and good information. I only really have two additional points to add to that, and I think this is something that that may not be understood out there as well with some of the membership who are perhaps new to a union environment. We do not decide what the contract looks like. We take input from the pilots and from the group, and that provides us with a mandate. That is what we then sit at the table and negotiate for. And at the end of our process, like once we have all of our sections individually TA'd, we don't bring a contract to you. We don't bring a tentative agreement to the pilots until we all feel confident that this is a tentative agreement that is worth bringing to the pilots. We will vote on it before it comes to you. And then there's another safety catch in there as well. Even if we, the MEC and the negotiating committee, agree on a tentative agreement or agree to present you with this tentative agreement, the pilot group then ultimately votes on it. So you can rest assured that we won't bring you something that we don't think should be ratified. But at the end of the day, you, the pilots, decide for yourselves whether this is a tentative agreement that you feel is worth your signature.
Amazing. And, just to kind of slowly wrap things up here, Adam mentioned a little earlier something called a bargaining portal. And I just want to know a little bit more about that and what's involved with that.
I can quickly sum it up. We've been working with our communications team to have a bargaining portal added to our website. So it's not there yet. There'll be a communication that comes out when it's available. So watch your emails for that. But what it'll have is all the negotiating committee comms, our updated, most up-to-date table, progress table with the red, yellow, green circles that we've been using to keep people sort of apprised. It'll very likely have these podcasts on them. It'll have any roadshow snippets and frequently asked questions. It's going to be your sort of one-stop shop to get fully informed and up to date with bargaining progress and any negotiating questions that you might have. There'll be some ALPA videos on there too as well to take you through the process just from a really general perspective.
Amazing. And I just want to wrap things off here, gentlemen, by thanking both of you for being here today. I'm really happy we're getting to be able to do this. It's a great way to get the membership informed and engaged. And I want to speak directly to the members listening to this podcast. Please share this podcast. Please download it, listen to it.
Stay engaged, check your emails. This is the best thing, is we need high active participation. I think out of the 98% of eligible Transat pilots, 91% voted in favor of the TA. That's an overwhelmingly strong percentage of support.
Yeah, so those are all really good points, Ze'ev, and it's something that I wanted to touch on as well, and that's essentially the pilot unity aspect. The strength of the MEC and the negotiating committee is not founded on the MEC and the negotiating committee. That's just one very small part of a much larger group, and that larger group is you guys out there. It's everybody. It's the pilots. Speaking of Transat, for example, and the 91% voting to ratify out of 98% of eligible pilots who could vote, that was just the culmination of their unity. That was like the swan song of how unified that group is. During the entire process of negotiating, those pilots, rallied behind their NC, their negotiating committee, and the MEC. They had a high level of engagement, MEC meetings, surveys. They all wore the lanyards. It was a visible sign to anybody who's casting an eye in their direction, including management, that this was a formidable group that was all rallying for a modern contract. And they achieved that modern contract, again, not based on the people in the room solely, but as an entire group. It speaks volumes, and that's critical to our success as well.
Thanks, Ze'ev. It was great to finally get this together and get this out to the membership.
Yeah, thank you, Ze'ev. I appreciate all the efforts that you've put into putting this together and for giving us the opportunity to chat about this important time in our history.
All right, that wraps up episode 1 of the Jetstream Pilot Podcast. Thanks for tuning in and being a part of the discussion. We've got several more episodes already in the pipeline with lots of great conversations ahead. If you have questions, feedback, or suggestions, you can reach us at cjtpodcast@elpa.org. Until then, fly safe. We'll see you on the next one.